Who
Who
did
broke
this
your
to you? Tell
ribs?
me right
The
now.
Mafia boss demanded.
I
By
don't know, I
dusk,
swear.
23
Please
men were
believe
gone.
me.
The streets were quiet, save for the occasional clatter of boots on stone or the low hum of whispered conversation. In this city of secrets and smoke, few dared to walk alone at dusk. On the edge of the city, near the crumbling walls of the old kingdom, a figure lay slumped against the cold stones. Her name was Leora, a young warrior with eyes like storm clouds and hair the color of autumn fire. Her body was bruised, her breath shallow, and across her ribs was a strange, crescent-shaped mark that glimmered faintly in the dying light. She had no memory of how she came to be there, only the sting of pain and the distant echo of voices. Somewhere in the heart of Velthria, in a palace hidden from common eyes, a man known only as Kale, the Black Sovereign, sat in a chair carved from dark iron and blackened oak. His fingers drummed slowly against the armrest, each tap a measured pulse of controlled rage. No one in the kingdom dared question his will. None, that is, except the shadows themselves, which whispered rumors he never wished to hear. Tonight, however, those whispers would reach him in the most undeniable way. One of his scouts arrived, a young messenger breathless and trembling. "She is alive," he said, bowing quickly. But Master Kale, her ribs, the mark. Kale's eyes narrowed, sharp as blades. "Who broke her ribs?" he demanded. The question was not angry, it was ice, slicing through the room, leaving no room for hesitation. The messenger swallowed hard. "We do not know, Master. She was found at the outskirts near the old walls. No one claims responsibility." Kale rose, moving with a grace that belied his size. Shadows seemed to cling to him, wrapping around his black coat like living things. "By dusk," he murmured, "I want answers. Every man who dared touch her must vanish. Every trace, every lie, nothing escapes me." He did not wait for more words. He turned, leaving the hall in silence so thick it could have been a veil. Outside, the city trembled, not from fear of the coming night, but from the thought of Kale's wrath. Leora's eyes fluttered open as darkness pressed against her. Pain radiated from her side, dull and persistent, and her ribs burned with something more than injury, something alive, almost like fire coiling beneath her skin. She tried to move but could not. The world tilted sharply and she gasped, catching herself on the stone. "You're awake." The voice was smooth, deep, and unfamiliar. She froze, scanning the shadows. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, with eyes that seemed to drink in every detail. His presence was commanding, not in the way of soldiers or kings, but in the way storms claim the sky. "Who are you?" she asked, voice weak. "I am Kale," he said simply, "and I need to know who did this to you." Leora's lips pressed together. The truth, the little she could remember, burned like a secret flame. She did not know, but the fear in his gaze, the weight behind his demand, made her heart pound. "Why do you care?" she whispered. Kale's expression softened, almost imperceptibly, but only for a moment. "Because," he said quietly, "no one harms what belongs to me." Leora's heart lurched. The words sounded possessive, dangerous, yet there was something else, something protective that made her chest ache. She wanted to step back, to retreat, yet her legs would not obey. "Why me?" she asked, barely audible. "Why would anyone target me?" Kale tilted his head, studying her as one might study a rare flower, delicate, fierce, unyielding. "Because," he murmured, "you are not what you seem, and perhaps because they fear you more than they fear me." The wind outside rose, carrying the smell of iron and smoke from the city below. Leora shivered, and Kale moved closer, his cloak brushing the floor. He crouched, resting one hand lightly on the stone near hers, not touching her, yet close enough to feel a pulse of warmth between them. "You will not lie to me," he said softly. "I will know the truth, one way or another." She closed her eyes. The truth was a tangle she could not yet untangle herself. The mark on her ribs pulsed faintly, and with it came flashes, memories she did not understand. Shadows moving, voices chanting, and a hand, larger than any human's, reaching toward her in the dark. "What is this?" she asked, lifting her hand to her side. Kale's eyes followed the mark, narrowing. "A curse," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Or a warning, perhaps both. Either way, it binds us whether you wish it or not." Leora stared at him, heart pounding. "Binds us? I don't understand." "You will," Kale said. "But not yet. Tonight you need rest. Tomorrow we will begin. There are things in this city and beyond it that you do not yet know, and by the dawn, I promise, answers will come." He turned, stepping back into the shadow, leaving Leora trembling on the cold stones. For the first time in her life, she felt watched, not with mere curiosity, but with something heavier, something that both terrified and intrigued her. By morning, the city below stirred, unaware of the events at the edge of its walls. Leora sat, wrapping her arms around herself, and tried to remember the details of the attack. She had trained her body for battle, yet something had overpowered her. The thought of the men who had struck her and their sudden disappearance made her heart thud. Kale arrived as the first rays of sunlight gilded the ruins. His black coat swept the dust, and he carried with him the air of inevitability. "You will come with me," he said. "We need to uncover who sent them, and perhaps why." Leora hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse, to run, to hide. But another part, the part that could not explain the pull in her chest, the heat in her veins, rose to her feet. "I don't know where to go," she admitted, voice small. "You will follow me," Kale said simply. "Because if you do not, neither of us will survive what comes next." And so they set out together. The streets of Velthria seemed different now, darker, more alive. Shadows clung to corners, and whispers followed them like invisible guides. Leora's ribs ached, the mark pulsing faintly as if in warning. And all the while, Kale moved beside her, silent, watchful, almost impossibly strong, yet not without a shadow of vulnerability that she could feel in the way he sometimes glanced at her. They arrived at a narrow alley where Kale had ordered his scouts to gather intelligence. "The men who attacked you," he said, voice low, "they are gone. By dusk, 23 of them vanished. No bodies, no trails, only whispers." Leora felt a chill. "Vanished?" Kale's eyes were stormy. "Yes, and if you think you are safe because of distance, think again. The city is full of eyes, full of secrets, and someone wants you, alive or dead. It does not matter which, but we will find them. And when we do," he did not finish. The weight in his gaze said enough. The power he wielded was absolute, yet it was tempered by a strange restraint. For the first time, Leora felt the stirrings of something she had never known, fear mixed with fascination. She did not understand it. She did not want to. And yet, as the sun climbed higher, she realized that her fate was no longer her own. Kale turned, scanning the streets with a predator's focus. "Do you understand, Leora?" he asked. "The world you thought you knew is gone, and by tonight you will either be ready or lost." She nodded, heart hammering. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and the pain, a spark of determination flared. She would not fall. She would not break. And perhaps she would understand the man who held her fate in his hands. The wind carried a faint whisper from the shadows. "Do you even know whose side you're really on?" Leora shivered. And yet, as she met Kale's eyes, she realized, perhaps, neither of them did. The night had fallen over Velthria like a heavy velvet curtain. The city, which seemed alive during the day, had become silent, as if holding its breath. Shadows stretched across alleyways and empty squares, and even the wind felt cautious, moving slowly through the twisted streets. Somewhere in the heart of the city, Kale and Leora moved quietly, their footsteps soundless against the stone. They were heading toward the oldest part of the kingdom, where the ruins of the abandoned fortress still held whispers of long-forgotten kings and queens. The walls were cracked and overgrown with ivy, and broken towers leaned like tired soldiers. Leora could feel the weight of history pressing down on her, heavy and relentless. Every step she took seemed to echo with voices that had not been heard in centuries. "You must trust me," Kale said softly, his cloak brushing the stone floor. His voice carried an authority that made Leora's pulse quicken, though she was unsure why. The man who attacked you, he was not acting alone. Someone or something is guiding them. And it is old, older than this city, older than even the kings themselves. Leora glanced at him, her brow furrowed. Something guiding them. Like what? Kale's eyes darkened and he stopped, turning to face her. The light of a flickering torch caught his features, highlighting the sharp lines of his face and the storm that always seemed to swirl in his gaze. A curse, he said. A force that chooses its victims. You were marked, Leora. And because of it, you are part of something far greater than you realize. Leora looked down at the crescent-shaped mark on her ribs. It pulsed faintly, almost as if it were alive, reminding her of the pain she had felt and the fear that had clawed at her heart. "Why me?" she whispered. "I'm not special, I'm not like you." Kale's expression softened, though only for a moment. "You are strong," he said. "Stronger than anyone I have seen, and sometimes strength is exactly what the world fears." They moved on, deeper into the ruins, where the wind moaned through the broken walls and the stars overhead shone like cold eyes watching from above. Leora could not stop herself from shivering. She had fought in battles before, but nothing had prepared her for this, walking into shadows that seemed to move with intent, feeling the pulse of something unseen beneath her skin. "Kale," she said after a long silence, "what is this curse? Why is it tied to me?" Kale's gaze remained fixed on the path ahead, but his voice was low, almost distant. "It is tied to my past," he said, "to a choice I made long ago, a choice that cost many lives. I thought I could control the world with fear, with power, but I could not control this. Not this." Leora's heart ached at the hint of vulnerability in his voice. The man who commanded the underworld, who could make 23 men vanish by dusk, had regrets. He had made mistakes, and yet he carried them alone. The ruins opened into a courtyard where a shattered fountain stood, dry and cracked, its stone lions worn and chipped. Kale stepped to the center, stopping in front of the fountain, and finally turned to Leora fully. "You have been marked," he said. "But it is not just a mark of pain. It is a bond, and it links us. You may not understand it now, but you will." Leora swallowed hard. She wanted to step back, to reject the idea, but the pull she felt toward Kale was stronger than anything she had known. It was a strange mix of fear and fascination, a magnetic force that made her chest ache. "Linked how?" she asked. Kale knelt down, his eyes level with hers. "The curse chooses the one who can either save or destroy me," he explained. "And in you it sees potential. Potential for change, for redemption, for power beyond what you know. But it also sees danger if you fail to understand it." Leora's fingers brushed against her ribs, where the mark throbbed faintly. She did not understand it, and yet she could feel it deep in her bones, a warning, a challenge, and perhaps a promise. The night grew colder, and a wind swept through the courtyard, carrying with it whispers that sounded almost human. Leora stepped closer to Kale instinctively. He did not move away. Instead, he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. His touch was firm, commanding, but not cruel. It was steady, anchoring, and Leora could feel her pulse quicken. "We must find the source of this curse," Kale said. "And we must do it before it claims more lives, or before it claims you entirely." The words made Leora shiver, not from cold, but from the weight of them. The idea that her life, and Kale's, was now bound to something dark and ancient made her feel both terrified and alive in a way she had never experienced. They left the ruins and moved through the city, avoiding the main streets. The night felt alive, almost aware of their presence. Shadows shifted in corners, and distant laughter echoed like it belonged to no one. Leora could feel the pulse of the curse growing stronger, and she realized that the mark on her ribs was no longer just a pain. It was a guide, leading her somewhere she could not yet see. Finally, they reached the edge of the city, where the forest began. The trees were tall and twisted, their branches tangled like the fingers of giants. Darkness pooled beneath the canopy, and the air smelled of damp earth and old magic. Kale stopped at the forest's edge. "Beyond this point," he said, "there is a place older than the kingdom itself, a place where the curse first took root. If we are to understand it, we must go there." Leora hesitated, looking into the darkness. Fear clawed at her, but so did curiosity. And beneath it all, a strange longing, an unexplainable desire to follow Kale, to see where this path would lead, even if it meant danger. "Then we go," she said, finally. Kale nodded, his expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of something softer in his eyes, approval, perhaps, or relief. He moved ahead, and Leora followed, each step echoing in the silence. The forest was alive with sounds that were both familiar and strange. Leaves rustled without wind, and shadows shifted as if they had minds of their own. The deeper they went, the stronger the pull of the curse became. Leora could feel it in her chest, her ribs, and even in the tips of her fingers. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. In the center was a pool of water so still it reflected the stars perfectly, and at its edge lay a stone altar, covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. The air was heavy with magic, and Leora could feel the curse thrumming beneath her skin like a heartbeat. "This is it," Kale said, his voice low and reverent. "The place where the curse began. If we are to break it or control it, we must face what lies within." Leora stepped forward, hesitant but determined. The pool seemed to pull at her, and she could see her reflection, not just her face, but the mark on her ribs glowing faintly. For a moment, she saw Kale's reflection beside hers, and it made her heart skip a beat. "Are you ready?" Kale asked, his hand brushing hers again, grounding her. Leora took a deep breath. "I have to be." Kale nodded, and together they approached the altar. The symbols seemed to shimmer as they neared, and a voice echoed, not from anywhere but from everywhere at once. "You are not yet ready," the voice whispered, and Leora felt it deep inside her chest. "But the bond is growing, and soon it will demand a choice." Leora's heart pounded. She looked at Kale, whose eyes were dark with determination. "A choice about what?" she asked. Kale's hand tightened around hers. "About who we are, about what we are willing to become, and about whether we will survive the shadows that follow." The wind rose suddenly, swirling around them, carrying the whispers of the past and the promise of danger. The pool shimmered, reflecting not just the stars but visions of things yet to come, paths of darkness and light, of choices and consequences. Leora felt her ribs burn, the mark pulsing stronger than ever. She realized with both fear and awe that the curse was not just a threat, it was a key to something she did not yet understand. And it bound her to Kale in ways that frightened her, thrilled her, and drew her closer to him than she had ever imagined. Kale stepped closer, his face near hers, his eyes searching hers. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "we face it together." Leora nodded, her own voice steady. "Together." And for a moment, in the center of the ancient forest, surrounded by shadows and whispers, the world felt suspended. Two lives bound by fate, standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. The night held its breath. And then from the darkness a figure moved, its presence unmistakable, its intent clear. Leora caught a glimpse of glowing eyes and a shadow that did not belong. Kale's hand tightened around hers. "It begins," he whispered. And Leora realized that nothing would ever be the same. The forest had grown silent, as though it too were holding its breath. The wind no longer whispered in the trees. Even the stars seemed dimmer, as if a shadow had passed over them. Leora felt it in her chest first, the pulse of the curse, strong and insistent, calling her forward. Every step she took toward the clearing with Kale felt heavy with meaning. She could feel the forest watching them, guiding them, or perhaps testing them. Kale led the way, his cloak brushing against the undergrowth, his eyes fixed on a distant part of the forest where darkness thickened like water. "The curse is not just a mark," he said quietly, as if speaking too loudly might wake it. "It is tied to my past, to a choice I made that I have regretted every day since. I thought I could control everything with power, but this is beyond control." Leora glanced at him, trying to read the man who was both terrifying and magnetic. His face was calm, but she could sense the tension coiled beneath his skin like a spring ready to snap. "What choice?" she asked. Kale's gaze fell to the ground, shadowing his expression. "Long ago I betrayed someone I should have protected," he said. "To gain power to survive, I allowed an innocent to suffer, and now the curse has returned, seeking balance." Leora felt a shiver run down her spine. She had never seen Kale speak like this, his voice low, vulnerable, unguarded. And yet, even in confession, there was a quiet strength that made her want to trust him. But fear clawed at her too. The idea that she was connected to this ancient curse, tied to his past sins, was overwhelming. They walked in silence for a while, only the sound of their footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves breaking the stillness. Then the forest opened into a small clearing, moonlight streaming down like silver rain. In the center of the clearing was a stone arch, carved with intricate symbols that pulsed faintly with a pale blue light. "This is the entrance," Kale said, his voice tight with control. "Beyond this arch lies the labyrinth of ashes where the curse began. If we are to understand it, if we are to survive it, we must go inside." Leora's heart pounded. The labyrinth was said to be a place older than any living thing, where shadows could speak, and where the dead whispered truths no living person wanted to hear. And now she was about to step into it, guided by the man who had become both her protector and the source of her fascination. "I'm ready," she said, though her voice trembled. Kale offered a small nod. "Then we go together. And remember, trust what you feel, not what you see." The labyrinth does not care for reality. They stepped through the arch and the world shifted. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of ash and earth. Shadows moved at the edge of vision, slipping just beyond the reach of the light. Leora felt her ribs ache, the mark burning faintly, as if reminding her that she was not alone in this place. The labyrinth was alive in a way that was both beautiful and terrifying. Its walls were made of black stone, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly in the darkness. The floor seemed to breathe beneath their feet, rising and falling with a rhythm that matched the beating of Leora's heart. Every corner, every corridor, seemed to twist and shift, as if the labyrinth itself were aware of their presence and intent on testing them. Kale moved with ease, guiding them through the twisting passages. Leora tried to follow, but the corridors seemed endless, and every turn felt both familiar and strange. She caught glimpses of shadowy figures in the corners of her vision, shapes that vanished when she blinked, leaving only a lingering sense of unease. "Stay close," Kale said, his voice steady. "The labyrinth feeds on fear. It wants you to doubt yourself, and it wants me to doubt you." Leora's chest tightened. The thought that even Kale might not be able to protect her made her stomach churn. And yet she could feel his presence beside her, constant and unyielding, and it gave her a small measure of courage. They reached a large chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, the walls covered in the same glowing symbols. In the center of the room lay a pool of black water, still and deep, reflecting not the light, but the darkness itself. Leora felt the pull of it immediately, her eyes drawn to the surface as if it were calling her name. Kale stepped forward. "This is the heart of the labyrinth," he said quietly. "The curse lives here and it will test both of us." Leora swallowed hard. "Test us how?" Kale did not answer. Instead, he took her hand, his grip firm and grounding. "Whatever happens," he said, "we face it together." The pool rippled, though there was no wind. Shapes began to rise from its surface, shadowy figures that flickered like smoke, their faces distorted, yet eerily familiar. Leora felt a pang of recognition, though she could not place it. Each figure whispered words she could not understand, voices that seemed to echo from her own memories. The largest shadow stepped forward and Leora felt her heart seize. It was Kale, or a version of him, twisted and dark, filled with rage and pain. "You cannot escape me," the shadow said, its voice low and harsh. "You are mine and you will pay for your betrayal." Kale's eyes met hers and she could see the struggle within him. The shadow was not real, yet it carried a truth he could not deny, a reflection of his own guilt and fear. Leora realized with both fear and awe that this was the curse's test, to face the darkness within, to confront the parts of themselves they had tried to hide. "Do not fear it," Kale said, his voice steady but low. "It is a reflection, not the truth. You are stronger than its lies." Leora took a deep breath, her hand tightening around his. She felt the mark on her ribs burn brighter and with it, a sense of clarity. She understood suddenly that the curse was not just a threat, it was a mirror, showing them the parts of themselves they had refused to face. The shadow lunged at them, a swirl of darkness and anger, but Kale met it head-on, his presence solid and unyielding. Leora felt a surge of courage rise within her. She stepped forward, reaching toward the shadow, and as she did, the mark on her ribs flared with light, connecting her to Kale in a pulse of warmth and strength. The shadow recoiled, hissing like a creature caught in a net, and then dissolved into mist. Leora stumbled back, breathless, her heart racing. Kale steadied her, his hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly. "You faced the darkness together." For a moment they simply stood there, the weight of the labyrinth pressing down on them, and yet a sense of victory blossomed between them. The bond of the curse, once threatening and painful, now felt like a connection, an unspoken promise that neither would face the darkness alone. Leora's chest heaved, and she looked up at Kale, meeting his eyes. There was something in them that she had never seen before. Not just the storm, not just the power, but a glimmer of something softer, something vulnerable. And for the first time, she felt that pull she could not explain, the mixture of fear, awe, and longing that had haunted her since the moment he had found her. Kale's hand brushed a strand of hair from her face, and Leora felt a shiver run down her spine. "You are remarkable," he said softly. "Do you understand? This, what we faced, it is only the beginning, but you are stronger than I ever imagined." Leora swallowed, her voice trembling. I only followed you." "Following is not weakness," Kale said. "It is courage. And tonight you proved it." The labyrinth seemed to settle around them, the shadows retreating, the air growing lighter. But even as relief washed over them, Leora felt a new awareness, a sense that the curse was not yet done, that it would continue to test them, to challenge them, to demand choices that would shape their lives in ways they could not yet imagine. Kale turned, his gaze sweeping the chamber and then back to her. "We leave soon," he said. "But remember this, whatever comes next, whatever dangers await us beyond the labyrinth, we face them together, and nothing will break that bond." Leora nodded, her fingers brushing his. She could feel the pulse of the curse in her ribs, and yet it no longer felt like a chain. It felt like a bridge, a connection between her and Kale, between fear and courage, between past and future. The shadows stirred one last time, whispering words that Leora could not understand, and then they faded. The labyrinth had tested them, and they had survived. But as they stepped toward the exit, Leora could not shake the feeling that this victory was only temporary. Outside, the forest was quiet once more, the moonlight silver and calm. Kale walked beside her, his presence steady and grounding. Leora realized, with a mixture of fear and hope, that she trusted him completely, perhaps for the first time in her life. But the wind carried a faint whisper, almost like a warning. The heart of darkness is not yet defeated, and the bond will demand more. Leora shivered, looking at Kale. He caught her gaze, and for a moment there was no fear, no pain, only understanding. "We are ready," he said quietly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." And Leora knew she would follow him to the ends of the world, into the shadows, into the unknown. Because now their fates were intertwined, bound by more than magic or curse. They were bound by trust, courage, and a connection neither of them fully understood, but both had come to rely upon. The night stretched on, calm and eternal, yet beneath it, the pulse of the curse lingered, watching, waiting, testing. And Leora realized that the true journey had only just begun. The first light of dawn touched the horizon, spilling pale gold across the city of Velthria. From the heights of the moonlit citadel, Kale gazed over the kingdom, his cloak still dark against the morning. Beside him, Leora stood silently, the weight of the labyrinth still heavy in her chest. Their journey had been perilous, yet the most difficult trials awaited them here, where shadows and power met in the heart of the city. "The curse, it is stronger here," Kale said quietly, his voice low enough that only Leora could hear. "This place, it feeds on ambition, on fear, on regret. If we are to end it, we must confront not just what it is, but who I have been." Leora looked at him, searching his face. He seemed both commanding and fragile in the morning light, a man shaped by darkness yet capable of great strength. "Kale," she said softly, "we've faced the labyrinth together. We can face this too, whatever it takes." Kale's gaze met hers, stormy and deep, but there was a flicker of something else, trust, respect, and perhaps hope. "Together," he agreed. They entered the citadel through a side gate, where the halls were silent and empty, abandoned in the chaos of past rulers. The air was thick with the scent of stone and ash, and shadows clung to the corners as if waiting for them. Every step they took echoed, the sound magnified in the vast emptiness. Leora could feel the pulse of the curse stronger here, its presence almost like a living thing pressing against her chest. "The heart of the curse is not an object," Kale said, keeping his voice low. "It is tied to me, to the choices I made, and to the life I took to claim power. To break it, I must face the truth openly, without fear or concealment. Only then can the curse be undone." Leora nodded. "And you are the anchor," Kale said, "the light that steadies me. Without you, I would not survive this." The words made her heart skip a beat. There was no boast, no claim of dominance, only the quiet acknowledgement of reliance, of trust. Leora realized she had never felt so connected to anyone, not even in battle, not even in moments of greatest danger. The inner courtyard of the citadel was a place of ruin and shadow. Broken statues of long-dead rulers lined the edges, their stone eyes empty and unseeing. In the center lay a raised platform, etched with intricate runes that pulsed faintly. Kale led Leora to it, kneeling before the symbols as if in silent prayer. "The curse is bound to this place," he murmured. "To the choices I made, to the lives I affected. We must summon it, confront it, and face it with courage. Only then can it be broken." The air shifted suddenly, cold and heavy. Shadows rose from the platform, coalescing into shapes that were both familiar and terrifying. Faces appeared in the darkness, those of people Kale had wronged, those whose lives had been changed by his ambition. Leora could feel their presence, their judgment, and their sorrow. "You will face yourself," the shadows whispered, voices overlapping in a chorus of accusation. "You will confront the man who caused pain, the man who betrayed trust, the man who let fear rule your heart." Kale's shoulders tensed, but he did not falter. "I am ready," he said, his voice firm. Leora stepped beside him, feeling the mark on her ribs pulse strongly. The curse was no longer just Kale's, it was theirs, tied together by trust, courage, and shared struggle. She felt the strength flowing through her, steady and warm like the first rays of sunlight cutting through the darkness. "Together," she whispered. The shadows surged forward, and Kale's figure was reflected in their shapes, twisted, dark, yet unmistakably him. The man he had been, the choices he had made, all appeared before them. Kale raised his hand, and the shadows recoiled slightly, sensing the determination that now burned within him. Leora reached out, her hand brushing his, and felt the pulse of the curse flare. The shadows hissed and twisted, but the warmth of their connection anchored them, giving Kale the courage to speak aloud what he had carried in silence for years. "I see the pain I have caused," he said, his voice steady. "I acknowledge the lives I have taken, the trust I have broken, and the fear I have spread. I cannot undo the past, but I can choose the future. And I choose to protect, to honor, and to face the consequences of my actions. No more hiding, no more walls. I am ready to be judged not by shadows but by truth. The shadows trembled, their forms shifting and flickering. One by one, the faces softened, the anger and sorrow lifting like mist. Leora could feel the change in the air, a release, a letting go. The curse pulsed once more, bright and fierce, and then dissolved, leaving only silence and the faint glow of runes beneath their feet. Kale exhaled, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in decades. Leora felt the tension in her own chest ease as well. The curse had been broken, not by power alone, but by acknowledgement, truth, and courage. They stood together on the platform, the morning light streaming over them, illuminating the citadel in a golden glow. Leora looked at Kale, her heart swelling with emotions she could not name, relief, admiration, awe, and something deeper, something that pulled at her very soul. "You did it," she said softly. "No," Kale replied, his voice quiet but firm. "We did it together." For a long moment they simply stood, the silence between them filled with unspoken understanding. Kale reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Leora's face. "You were my anchor," he said. "Without your courage, your presence, I could not have faced this. I would not have survived." Leora felt warmth flood her chest. She had always been independent, strong, and capable. But in this moment, she understood the strength of connection, of trust, and of facing fear alongside someone who could match her courage. "I trusted you," she said, meeting his gaze. "Even when I was afraid, even when I didn't understand." Kale's expression softened, and for the first time, Leora saw the man beneath the legend, beneath the power and shadow, the man capable of feeling, of regret, of love. "And I will not betray that trust," he whispered. The city of Velthria stretched out below them, quiet and bathed in morning light. Kale turned, his gaze sweeping the rooftops, the streets, and the distant mountains. "The world may fear us," he said softly, "because of what we were, what we survived. But together we are stronger than any shadow, any curse, any danger. Together we are free." Leora reached for his hand, and this time he did not just allow it. He held it firmly, grounding them both. "Then we are ready," she said. "Ready for whatever comes next." The wind stirred around them, gentle and calm now, as if the world itself were acknowledging their victory. Leora felt the pulse of the curse finally fade, leaving only a sense of peace and the warmth of shared triumph. Kale's hand tightened around hers, and he stepped closer. "I am not the man I once was," he said. "And you have changed me in ways I cannot describe. You brought light to the darkness I carried alone for so long." Leora's eyes met his, and in that gaze she saw the promise of something lasting, something beyond fear, beyond power, beyond shadow. She saw trust, hope, and the quiet strength of love born from courage and shared struggle. "I am not the same either," she whispered, "and I will not forget what we have faced or what we have become together." The moment stretched, silent and eternal, the world around them holding its breath. And then Kale leaned forward just slightly and brushed his forehead against hers, not a gesture of possession, but of connection, understanding, and promise. Leora closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his presence, the steady pulse of his heart, and the bond that had carried them through darkness. For the first time in her life, she felt completely safe, not from danger but from being herself, fully and without fear. The citadel, once a place of shadows and power, now felt alive in a different way. The echoes of the past remained, but they no longer held them captive. Leora and Kale had faced the darkness, acknowledged their pasts, and emerged stronger, bound together not by fear or curse but by choice, trust, and courage. As the sun rose higher, painting the city in golden light, Leora felt a sense of peace she had never known. She looked at Kale, and in his eyes she saw the reflection of their shared journey, the trials, the fears, the victories, and the bond that now tied them together. "The world may still test us," Kale said, his voice quiet but certain. But whatever comes, we face it as one. Leora nodded, her hand in his, the mark on her ribs finally cool and still. Together, she said. And as the city of Velthria awoke below them, the first true morning in decades, Leora and Kale stepped forward from the citadel, ready to face the future, not as Shadow and Mark, but as two souls bound by courage, trust, and a love forged in the heart of darkness. The wind whispered around them, carrying a promise of new beginnings, and for the first time neither of them feared what lay ahead. They were free.